Greetings, Deconverted Man here. It's 2 in the morning and I'm awake, so I'm going to respond to a comment, but because it's so early in the morning, I'm not doing it at my normal location. At any rate, there's a comment thread on the Captive Desk video, and I responded to some of it, but I wanted to read it out, and I can't put it on screen because I have it on phone, so, you know. This person, the Disconnect 5769, had made a comment that the only way it makes sense is with God. I always enjoyed the line, everything is fittily framed upon him, and he was the Word of God, without nothing was made. From the foundation of the earth, he was literally the very words spoken to introduce existence to the void of space. Well, enjoying words is fine. There's nothing wrong with enjoying words, but if we're trying to interpret reality as it really is, then whatever any words say must be subject to analysis, and it must be scrutinized to see whether or not they're true. And things in the Bible may or may not be true. That is to say, they might not align with reality as science has come to understand it. And science is the best methodology that we have to figure out how things are. Now, the why is, of course, maybe a philosophical statement or a question to answer in that philosophical realm, but maybe the why is also answerable within science. It just depends how we go about it. Regardless, I noticed that this had a logical fallacy. The only way it all makes sense, well, that in and of itself is a appeal to personal incredulity, which is when you say, this thing doesn't make sense unless this other thing is true, or that's the only way it could be true. I don't understand it, therefore X is true. So it might very well be that that is the answer, but you aren't arriving at the answer using a logical method. Rather, you're arriving at an answer by using an illogical process, or so it seems. So I said that's an appeal to personal incredulity. Just because it's the only thing you think makes sense doesn't make it true. He responded, so the most logical answer isn't likely at all, right? That Copeland you're sniffing must be some quality ignorance. Not sure why the personal attacks are in there, or at least personal slights are in there. The most logical answer, well, do we know the logical answer? Do you know logic? I mean, what do you mean by logical? By logical, I would mean informal logic, since that's the thing that I've studied the most and tend to understand the most. Even though I can make errors on that, I'm also open to correction on those errors. But how would you know or identify the most logical answer? That's not a thing in logic. You either have an answer or you don't. There isn't a degree of logicalness that one can apply. So that suggests to me that you don't necessarily understand the fundamentals of logic. But the word logical is something that you know of because it's in the zeitgeist of humanity. So I think that you're using it in a informal way. You're using it in a conversational way. Nonetheless, if you had some sort of methodology to deduce what the answer was or is, that would be great, and we would love to see that. Then he says after that, another response. Also, I could say the same for you. Different being, I have evidence. You don't. I'm not sure what he means. What evidence for what? All I said was that he performed a logical fallacy. The evidence of that is that he performed the logical fallacy. I haven't made any claims at all about anything, but he thinks that I am making some claim, at least implicitly. I'm not sure what claim he thinks I'm making, but perhaps he'll tell me what claim he thinks I'm making. He won't, but... And I said simply, what evidence do you have? Please explain. Because I don't know what he's talking about. Evidence for what? What is it that he thinks he has evidence for? I have no idea. And then he responds, something can't come from nothing, I win. You win what? The debate? This wasn't a debate, but if you're attempting to win, well, okay, I understand the need and desire to win a competition, but the goal should be to try to find the truth of reality, whatever reality ultimately turns out to be. And that's not a competition. We're all in this together. We're all trying to figure out what is real. And that's not a win or lose situation. It's just a matter of, is it true? Have we found a way to verify its truth? But as far as something coming from nothing, the only people that really seem to make that claim are the theists. I don't know of any atheist or skeptic that has made the claim that something comes from nothing. There might be one or two people that have made that claim, perhaps. I might just simply be unaware of them. But this is a common idea that theists tend to have in regards to the universe from the conceptual point of non-theism, of atheism. That, well, you obviously, if you're not believing that there's a God that did it, then that must mean you think X. But no, it doesn't mean anything at all. In regards to the origins of the universe, I have absolutely no idea. That's something for science to resolve. There's a few ideas out there about it, and there's many theories that have been put out, and the popular one being Big Bang cosmology. That one does explain a lot of things, but there are unknowns within that. As you go backwards further in time, in regards to the Big Bang cosmology model, physics becomes impossible to do as we understand it, because the universe gets really hot in those models. Of course, you'd have to understand scientific modeling, which is its own separate field that you would then need to understand to properly understand what the bleep any of that is saying. But basically, we don't know. So that's usually the stance that I've heard other atheists and that I myself have taken in regards to the ultimate origin of the universe. On a more philosophical, logical track, I would say that nothing, depending on what you mean by that, if you mean by nothing a lack of all the things that there is or ever was, I would have to ask if that also includes logic. Because if you don't have logical rules or laws, then you allow for paradox. And if paradox is allowed, then there would literally not be a rule that says you couldn't have something come from nothing. Because if you had a rule, then you have something. So you wouldn't have nothing the moment you had a rule that says you're not allowed to do this. So therefore, then nothing becomes kind of an incoherent idea at that analysis. Perhaps nothing is actually impossible. There never was a nothing moment or a nothingness, because that is impossible to be. So whatever the answer to where / how universe came to be is an unknown variable. I have no idea whence it came from. It could be a cycling universe that came from an antimatter universe, could be from what they call a white hole, it could be just the fabric of reality is always constantly stretching, and that constantly is making universes all over the place, but we just don't realize it because it's happening otherwheres and we're not in those locations where it's happening. There's all sorts of potential answers for that, but that's definitely not nothing. don't saddle me with assumptions that you're making about what I think, feel, or believe. Rather, instead, ask me so I can tell you. I don't think the universe came from nothing, nor do I think nothing is even possible. And if you really want to insist that it is possible, then okay, you have no rules, which means sure, we could have had something come from nothing because you don't have a rule that says you can't. So if you want to insist that you can have a rule, then you can't have nothing. So you have to decide if you want nothing and then the possibility of something, or you want a true nothing, which means, well, you can have anything, or do you want a nothing that isn't nothing because you now have a rule? You got to decide. It's one or the other. Anyways, I know that's very simple and easy to explain. And then he says, it's quite obvious if you use simple logic. Every living cell came from... Every living cell came from a previous cell. So what's the origin of biology? That's a good question. What does that question have to do with anything? See, if we don't know the answer to that question, then, well, we should learn it. We should study that and try to understand it better so that we have a better understanding of reality and how things work. But if I don't know the answer to that, or you don't know the answer to that, or you're not satisfied with the answers that are out there for that question, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't imply anything. Not having knowledge about something doesn't give you proof of something else. Rather, it just points to a lack of knowledge on that subject or ignorance. And thus you are committing another fallacy, appeal to ignorance. I don't know, therefore whatever it is you want to be true is true. That doesn't work that way. If biology exists in space and time and had to have a beginning, according to Dawkins... Okay, well, stop right there. The person that said whatever doesn't matter. Okay, let's get off the authoritarian sort of track. Dawkins knows about biological evolution, and I'm sure he said a lot about it, but he's not the go-to final say in biology. There's plenty of people that have said many things about biological evolution. He just happens to be somewhat famous and somewhat well known. But there's plenty of peer-reviewed papers to read on the subject and plenty of books to read on the matter that aren't written by Dawkins. There are many believers in God that have no problem at all with biological evolution and will explain it to you in various books that they've written. Now, if you steer clear of the creationist nitwits out there who are only selling pseudoscience, then you might actually learn some real science, which would be a great thing because knowledge is power. According to Dawkins, this isn't argued, it's a fact. To atheists and believers alike, the universe had a beginning. Well, Dawkins wouldn't be an authority on the universe. He's not a cosmologist. He's a biological evolutionist. So his field is inappropriate to appeal to when it comes to cosmology. Now, you might say, oh, well, Neil deGrasse Tyson, well, he's a science communicator. He knows some things about cosmology, but I don't know that I would necessarily call him a cosmologist because of that. He hasn't done enough peer-reviewed papers that I'm aware of that I would call him an expert on such matters. I've listened to plenty of National Science for Education videos and World Science videos on possible ideas for origins of the universe, and some of them are very easy to understand, others are very complicated and hard to understand or impossible to understand if you don't have the necessary understandings of the subject matter. But regardless, the origins of the universe are a mystery. Whether or not it has a ultimate beginning is also a mystery. It might be, it might not be. But even if Dawkins has said that, that doesn't make it true. Dawkins could very well be wrong about that. given that he's not an expert on the matter, I would then add further doubt that he's correct about it. And finally and ultimately, even if he has said it, it doesn't matter. We don't know the origin of the universe, or even if it has one in any sort of sense that we could easily wrap our heads around. It's a complicated subject. But I'm sure you've studied cosmology and have plenty of peer-reviewed papers on the subject, right? No, you don't. Okay. Perhaps we should leave cosmology to those who understand it and not make assumptions about it. Now, learning about it is a good thing, and I'd highly recommend you doing that. But don't go talking out of your rear end about it when you don't know anything about it. Just an idea. Thus, what powers and began it had to exist outside of it to manipulate its elements. Okay, this is typical theist nonsense. There is no outside universe, as far as we know. Or if there is, we wouldn't ever know about it. We can't observe an outside, and outside universe suggests that you think that the universe is contained in something, which isn't really what any physicist has ever thought in regards to the universe. So it seems to me, and I could be wrong, but it seems to me that you're maybe picturing the universe like in a bubble or something. And that, okay, that in your brain, you might think like it's in this bubble, that's floating around, and that there's an outside to the bubble. But no, the universe is everything and everywhere at all times. The endless space that you can stare into, that goes on forever. There is no edge of the universe. Thus, there is no beyond the universe. If you got to where the edge of the expanding universe is, I don't know what you'd find other than more space, empty space, because that's probably all that's out there. Is more space for it to fill into. Now, I don't know. Maybe there's an edge, but you would have to then prove that there was an edge to the universe. And thus, you would also have to prove that there's anything outside of the universe. Simply saying outside the universe has no coherent meaning. Basically, you're saying it's outside of reality, because the universe is reality, as far as we know, and that's it, as far as we know. So anything that you would have to say about the outside of the universe doing anything would be speculation. Had to exist outside the universe to manipulate its elements. Well, no, the elements of the universe were made during the Big Bang and due to stars. And those stars exploded, creating more elements. So we don't need anything outside of the universe to generate those things. We just need the universe. So you're wrong about anything that needing to be outside of the universe to control elements. I'd highly recommend, A History of Everything, I guess, by Bill Wurr. He summarizes all this stuff pretty well in that video, although it's not a scientific video. A 2D artist can't draw a 2D painting. Well, a 2D artist wouldn't be able to do anything at all because such a being couldn't exist, as far as we know. A 4D artist can draw a 3D painting, though, you see. Well, I don't know what a 4D artist would be or what you mean by 4D. The fourth dimension is time. So what about it? We are 4D things. Now, of course, if you mean the dimensional planes, not in the sense of up, down, left, right, line, and time, and instead are talking about like realities or other dimensions, like there's a alternate Earth or whatever out there or something woo like that. If that's what you mean, that's all pure speculation. And I'm not interested in speculation. I'm only interested in what we can or can't prove. And when you can't prove something, then you can't prove it. And it's a mystery. Irreducible complexity also screams of God existence. Well, that's not a thing. Irreducible complexity has been shown plenty of times to not be a thing. This is a creationist sort of idea that's out there, sadly. And sadly, certain theists promote this as science when it's pseudoscience. There isn't anything at all that you can point to and say that that is irreducibly complex. But they insist that it is because they think that that's an argument for God. Is God irreducibly complex? If so, then God would also need a creator. Is God simple? If it's not complex, then it has to be simple. But even a simple object needs something to make it. But your God is, of course, immune from needing to be made. But why? How does that work? If God is immune from these requirements of everything else, well, why would God be the only thing that's like that? Why couldn't anything else be that way too? I'll tell you what, I'm at work right now. When I get home, I have a list of roughly 100 evidentiary claims that science cannot explain without a creator. I don't care what list you have from whatever website that you're taking that from, or book, or whatever. Yeah, even if you had anything at all that couldn't be explained, that doesn't mean anything other than your own ignorance is at play. I'm sure that you're going to get it from some creationist website, and it will be easily debunked within moments of Google search. So, don't waste my time. He said, man, no one... And then I responded to him in saying that that isn't a thing, and I said none of this is evidence of God, rather it's evidence that you don't seem to understand a lot about science and how reality works. I also said that isn't how things work, though. I think you need to learn about science logic, even if we did have something unexplained. What the bleep? I keep navigating away from my own stuff here. That doesn't mean anything because we would not have to prove... We wouldn't have... I wrote this badly. Proof of the thing that we think explains the unexplained. So something... Simply pointing to something and saying, that's not explained, isn't proof of something else, okay? So here we have this panel here on the wall, right? If that panel was to suddenly open, unexplained, on its own... that'd be quite amazing. Would I be okay in saying a ghost did it? Well, I don't... What evidence do I have of a ghost? Right? Well, maybe a zombie opened it. Or a miniature man was inside of it and pushed it open. Or it was an invisible man. Or aliens, or time travelers. No, none of these things are things that have been proven to even be things. So if the panel opened, it'd scare the hell out of me for one. And secondly, it might indeed be a mystery, but even if I don't know how it happened, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that it was magic. There's all sorts of plausible, naturalistic explanations for it doing that. So when you appeal to ignorance, all you're doing is saying, I don't understand how that works, therefore, this other thing must be true. That's not logical. He said, man, no wonder you're correcting me, even... You're the Almighty, even though you offered no counterpoint, so I'm not sure why you said anything at all. Please tell me how irreducible complexity is and impossibly as a contingent for a creator. Please educate me, Almighty as Lord Sama. Well, your abrasive attitude isn't going to get you far in this life, and I would highly suggest that you mature a bit more in your interactions with people. It seems to me that you're rather uneducated about science, logic, and reality in general. And I'm just saying that that's what it seems to me. Your insults are unnecessary. I'm not insulting you. I'm telling you that you don't seem to know things. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. If you understood these things, you would be saying things in a different way. And I'm wondering if English is your native language, or if maybe you just are bad at typing, because, yeah, a lot of this doesn't make sense how you wrote it. Tell you how irreducible complexity is an impossibility. I didn't say that. I said it wasn't even a thing. It's not that it's not impossible. It's that we don't have an example of it. So those are different things. You would have to demonstrate that irreducible complexity is a thing. But we know it's not a thing. And if you want proof of that, well, you're going to have to learn science. You're going to have to learn biological evolution. You're going to have to learn about that stuff. I can't simply explain those things. They're complicated matters, and I'm simply not qualified to explain to you the mechanisms of biology. But other people out there have videos on them. Aaron Ra has a lot of videos on evolution itself, and it has talked about irreducible complexity from time to time. And I know other people make content about irreducible complexity, but YouTube might not be the best source of information. You might want to get a book or 2 or 3 on biological evolution, and if you get them from a non-creationist, for the love of humanity. That way you actually are learning about real reality and not the pretend reality that many theists sadly live in. Now, none of that means there is or isn't a God. None of the things that you've said are proof of God. And nothing I've said is proof against God. And in fact, I never claimed that there wasn't a God. Rather, my claims were all about the fact that you're using bad logic. And those claims are substantiated through the fact that you're using bad logic. Hopefully after this video, you'll stop using bad logic. But I strongly suspect that if you do respond to this video, you will do so with bad logic. So I would say, learn logic, or else the fucking lobster will fucking eat you.
Yeah, I will eat you. Nom nom nom.
He'll eat you.
Yeah. Also, why'd you call me the fucking lobster?
No reason.
You promised you wouldn't tell them what we did.
Anyways, thanks for watching. Until next time, be skeptical. And even after next time, stay skeptical. Because eyeball. That's why.